Hello, welcome to the Product Engineering podcast, where we dive deep into the art and science of creating innovative products that change the world. I am Dr. Padmavati Roy, your host. Today, I am thrilled to have Tom Halpin, a distinguished engineer and experienced practitioner in product engineering, and my esteemed colleague and guest today. Joining us, welcome.
Hello everyone. Today we will explore various facets of product engineering, from the roles involved to the virtual experiences that shaped successful product development. But before we dive into the specifics, I would like to invite Tom Halpin. Tom, please share a bit about your background and journey in product engineering.
Dr. Padma, thanks for having me today. Basically, I currently work in an agile DevOps enablement role, and I've had experience across various sectors over the course of my career, from factory automation to e-learning, training, finance, medical devices, and to IT services. And in these various sectors, I've held a range of positions from software development to technical management. In my current role, I try to take the positives and the negatives, the learnings and the insights that I've gained from these different experiences to assist clients in transforming their work processes. And in doing that, we try to apply Agile and DevOps, or introduce them. But I found in the introduction of that it's much more successful when you try to focus on product-aligned value streams, because I think that leads to better product development outcomes. So when we're doing this across my clients, we've kind of taken the lessons learned from those coaching engagements in what are traditionally face-to-face, or more recently over the web, on Zoom, etc., post-pandemic. And we kind of worked with others to productize those as a series of online interactive dojos. We started with a DevOps dojo, and then there was a product engineering dojo. And the idea of doing that, productizing them as interactive web-based content, was to facilitate scaled adoption of the associated cultures, practices, and tools within client companies. In effect, if you consider it, it's like what I consider to be the Golden Gate Bridge problem. You know, as soon as if you're trying to do everything in a large client, face to face, you start at one end of the client, and by the time you finish and you get to the end of painting the bridge, you have to start again. So the idea is you have to focus on scaling it, and online interactive dojos and ebooks based on those dojos can help with that. And the reason for the focus on product engineering is that I believe it can help teams achieve greater speed by recognizing the importance of occasionally slowing down. Everyone's trying to go faster in the modern world, but sometimes you need to pause and reflect on what you're doing, and then reflect. Once you've reflected, then invest in the right mix of product features, work practices, because by doing so, you can optimize your value stream, reduce technical and operational debt, and ultimately deliver better products and achieve greater success.
Absolutely, Tom, and thanks a lot for sharing. Your journey is truly inspiring, and I think now we can start with the basics. Can you please explain what product engineering is, what is all about, and why it is crucial in today's fast-paced, tech-driven world?
Yeah, I think it's kind of important as well to kind of set the context for this conversation. We're talking about product engineering in a software development context, and in that context, it's an approach that proposes that you take a business / customer-centric approach to the software development, and that this approach can be better facilitated by the judicious application of product engineering, underpinned by Agile and DevOps principles. And the a lot of
Yep.
companies then are, having realized this, are investing in helping customer facing teams adopt new approaches like product engineering to increase their agility and their collaboration, and most importantly, their responsiveness to customer needs. And product engineering is it's not an island. It embraces various concepts from other disciplines, like one of your own personal areas of expertise. It takes concepts from design thinking.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely, and I know that you've been a strong proponent of design thinking in where you work. So and this is kind of done with the aim of creating better products and services by first attempting to understand how users interact with them and the conditions under which they operate. Emphasizes bidirectional communication, amplifies feedback loops, a DevOps principle, tries to learn from mistakes and encourage experimental approaches. And I think that a lot of people have this kind of a natural inclination to do this, but a lot of teams people. But training is essential to facilitate the cultural shift from a lot of large organizations is predominantly a project-driven mindset to a product mindset. The book, I'm open sourcing a book. I've written a book. I suppose we forgot to introduce this actually at the start, but I'm open sourcing a book on product engineering. It's volume 2 of it, and the book aims to address that training need, and the objective of helping individuals ensure that the software applications, the integrations or the API or the tools that they develop, or along with any managed services that they may provide, are productized and hopefully then better aligned with business needs and market demands. In terms of, I suppose we could start with kind of saying what do we mean by productized or productization? And as you're aware, that's the process of transforming a service solution or an internal tool or application into a standardized product that can be consistently replicated, marketed, sold. And I think that's a kind of an outcome from design thinking as well. Like, you start design thinking and you're aiming for that.
Iteratively you will be doing the things.
Exactly. And that's kind of, again, you see a marriage of things coming together here. Agile is kind of iterative, DevOps is iterative, design thinking is iterative, and it's really started coming to a kind of in a software development context to try and kind of productize or productionize those combine and productionize those concepts. But you do that by defining clear features, designing for usability, establishing support systems, setting pricing models, etc., making the offering, trying to make the offering more accessible to a broader market, and with the goal, as we said, being to create a scalable, repeatable, not only a product, but also a product development process. Again, going back to DevOps concepts that meet specific customer needs and can be offered to multiple clients without extensive customization for each one.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And while we started the discussion, you mentioned about the dojos. So can you please share a little bit about dojos and their relevance to technology, how we can relate dojos being the Japanese fighting art and technology? How can you relate these two things?
Yeah, I mean, the dojos are kind of became popularized, I suppose, in the early, maybe 10, 15 years ago, in terms of as a training environment for software development. I think it was Target that started them. I'm not quite sure. I seem to remember reading that somewhere. In technology, in a martial art, it's the name for the training environment where you go to work with people of all levels and you practice your art and you improve your art. So in technology, there are also collaborative environments where teams of people come together and practice coding, problem solving, how to learn continuous improvement methodologies. And what you're trying to do is provide a safe space, that fosters a culture of learning, experimentation, and feedback.
It's like a techathon or a...
Yes, it is, yeah. Now, we kind of, if teams do this regularly, it can be sort of, a hackathon or a sort of a ramp-up program as well for sort of the face-to-face environment. But teams that engage in those, teams can enhance their skills, and they can also adapt quickly to new challenges. Face-to-face dojos are really important as well in this new sort of virtual world that a lot of people are working in, because it gives you a chance as well to focus on the sort of the personal relationships that you wouldn't otherwise get on Zoom. So ideally, the face-to-face, as we said earlier, face-to-face is ideal, but there's obviously costs associated with that, so you kind of move to the online world. Was what we did, and we developed online interactive web-based dojos or practice spaces or collaborative environments to provide a structured environment for continuous learning and improvement by provision of sort of hands-on practice in real-world scenarios.
So this basically sets a great foundation for what we are exploring as a product engineering as a topic. But now let us talk about various roles within product engineering team, and who will play the major or key roles, and how do their responsibilities intersect to drive the development process?
I think that depends a lot on where a team is starting from. If you're starting from sort of moving from a traditional project mindset to a product mindset, then the key players would include leadership, who have to provide sponsorship, because in effect, there's going to be some, like change causes friction. So therefore, you will need sponsorship so that you can sort of smooth out the edges of that, and to ensure that because it's not just change within the software team. If you just productize what's been done in the software development space, that works, but that gives you sort of an isolated improvement. You also need to improve in the business space. So the business expectations, the business timelines, they all have to adapt, and that's where the sponsorship comes in. And then, assuming that you've kind of got that sponsorship, then you've got product managers who would define a vision and a roadmap, designers who would ensure usability and aesthetics, engineers who develop and implement the technology, specialists in quality, for example, and security, who would be sort of either specialist engineers within the team who would look at sort of quality standards or security standards, DevSecOps, for example, or possibly even sort of regulatory specialists, depending if you're sort of say working in a highly regulated environment such as maybe say public sector or healthcare. And of course, I should have started off by saying in no particular order, because the collaboration is a kind of a circular effect that ensures, again, to try and aim at creating an efficient development process that, I suppose, integrates with the business. It can't be, or it has to sort of integrate with rather than orbit the business, because if you're not integrated with the business, then you might achieve the most efficient product development team, but you're focusing on too small a space in your value stream to improve, because as soon as their changes bubble out, they then hit into the processes that are outside in the business, and that would actually sort of negate a lot of the impact of the changes. So that's why effective communication and coordination
and also you say you mentioned it should come from the leadership. Sponsorship should be there from the top level leadership team. So implementing a proper product engineering is a top-down approach always. It's never bottom-up.
I think it's kind of both. I think it has to. I don't think anything can be pushed into a development team. I think the pull method. So and I think most development teams sort of have a natural affinity to move to these types of tools and technologies that would facilitate this approach. But then when they sort of bubble up when they try to bubble back up into the business, then the business obviously has its own pressures, And that's where the push down from leadership is when you actually do encounter a difficulty. You have two choices. You can either sort of live with it, you can try to go around it, or you can try to resolve it. And obviously that's where the sponsorship comes in, because obviously trying to resolve it provides the better outcome. So that's kind of why I think it's kind of a ground up movement that meets support coming down through the organization, because ultimately this is in support of a business, so it has to be aligned with business outcomes.
That's correct. And I have read through your product engineering ebook. I think some few years back. I think 2 years back. And it beautifully outlines the responsibilities and collaboration techniques that you have mentioned in various roles, and also how to get the synergy between various roles and increase the productivity. And this book version 1 was very insightful. And one unique aspect of your book is using virtual experiences to explain these roles and processes, so that a learner will understand when we are actually learning in a virtual environment. We understand various roles and how these process of product engineering actually in a live environment. It was like a live environment basically. Could you elaborate on how virtual experiences can enhance learning and practical application in product engineering?
I think as I noted earlier, I think the face-to-face actually gives you the best outcomes, but that's not always possible for time, resource, budgetary reasons. And then with the advent of communications and the sort of the pandemic, we all moved online in this industry. I mean, we all moved online and worked through the pandemic and weren't really affected by lockdown. And it was kind of interesting because a lot of my family and friends were affected by lockdown because their work stopped, and we kind of had we were still creating software and running systems. So that advent of communications technology, has thrived, and obviously now since post-pandemic, there's a kind of a merging of the worlds. People have gone back. Some people have gone back to the office. A lot of people are still working virtual first. So what we tried to do was we tried to create these online dojos that replicated, insofar as possible, a face-to-face environment. And again, it was done for scaling. Tried to make these immersive hands-on learning opportunities, or provide hands-on learning opportunities, and to allow people to simulate real-world scenarios and practice their skills in a controlled, sandboxed environment that mimicked the face-to-face experience. And the intention was to enhance understanding and facilitate the application of the concepts that we would have shared in a face-to-face environment, and trying to make that learning as engaging, as effective as possible. And what we try to do with these dojos is that we try to, I suppose, leverage the human experience. We designed them around a story, as you alluded to earlier, and that's people. People have been telling stories. We have an innate love for stories. The urge to tell them is embedded in our DNA. We've got myths, we've got legends, etc. And so what we designed was we created a scenario called a fictitious company, and then we, going back to the roles we talked about earlier, we created personas. So we had Paulo, the product owner. We would have had Dan, the developer. We would have Brenda from the business, and the idea being that we would then create scenarios, create conflicts between these characters, and then through the learning experience, we would resolve those conflicts, provide solutions, and by putting out the various personas, the intention was that if somebody was from the business and they were taking the training, they could sort of they would have an affinity for Brenda, and if they were a developer, they would sort of they would sympathize with Dan. So, and then if they were a product manager, they would align with Paulo. So that was the idea, and we did that, and we kind of thought, well, this is kind of interesting. We had good feedback on it, and I then looked at it and thought to myself, well, we had a mindset at the time where we were kind of aligned with a lot of what was going on in the industry, and we had noticed that we were leveraging from people that were talking at various conferences, that had published various books, that had open sourced various products. And we thought to ourselves, well, having benefited from the community, we'd like to give something back. So we that's why I kind of open sourced the ebook, and version 2 or volume 2, I think it's volume 2, I'll be open sourcing that shortly again, once I kind of put the final touches to it. So we created an ebook because that then allowed us that again was the intention of putting it out there at a bit of scale, because it allows take our role-based storytelling approach and then facilitate sort of large scale distribution of that. Or alternatively, it's also, the book is useful, has two purposes. One is that it talks about product engineering, and then the second is it's quite a good cure for insomnia.
Yeah. Yeah, that's very, very good. But how one can find your book, volume 1 and volume 2, if anybody wants to go through?
They'll be sharing it on LinkedIn, and obviously this podcast as well. We'll go to promote it as well, and I'll do a little bit of a launch.
Sure.
The book itself will be we'll be talking about that in a minute, but is how I created the book, because I think the book itself is a product, and by that I meant that it's a software product, and it has raw materials, and it has a production process, and then it has a distribution process. So the book itself is sort of benefits from the concepts contained within it.
Yeah, that's really fascinating. Virtual experiences certainly provide a hands-on approach for learning, and from that aspect, let us discuss some common challenges in product engineering and how teams can effectively overcome these challenges in the real life. We talked earlier about sort of the friction at times between the development teams and the business, but I mean, the challenges that kind of ensue would be not just even within the team, anything from communication gaps, technical obstacles, market changing, and it's how you sort of the standard facing every team, or a standard set of challenges, and the solutions then would involve sort of fostering open communication, adapting agile methodologies, staying adaptable to market trends. A lot of the focus at the moment as well about prioritization. There's a lot of attention being given to team topologies, for example. You're seeing a sort of in the software world, you're seeing that that you're seeing the emergence of platform teams, which in effect are productization of software. And now the teams are basically saying, our product is this platform, and then they provide access to the platform via API. In other words, they're providing a product out to the other teams who wish to consume that or interact with that product. And so that's kind of like so when I talk about market trends, that's kind of a lot of trends. That's one of the major trends going on at the moment. Regular feedback loops, iterative development, can focus on continuous improvement. Again, that's kind of core DevOps principles. They help teams navigate these challenges effectively, trying to ensure that the project or the product is aligned with the business, and timely delivery. The book tries to provide a series of strategies and tools within that kind of scenario that I outlined before, to help people overcome these challenges. Excellent, Tom. And I think these challenges can be also can be addressed if one uses effective, as you mentioned, effective agile methods and also methodologies. In that, you have review, retrospective, how you can improve, and what are the current, where are we right now, and how we can improve, so on and so forth. These are all very good practices what one can learn and apply. Great insights. In your experience, what best practices or strategies can teams adopt to ensure successful product development from conception to launch?
I think it's kind of obviously the moving from a project to a product mindset is the other thing I think as well is that we have a lot of teams that say they're doing agile, but all they're doing is waterfall and Jira. The team empowerment is important. and
Yep.
because it's like you say you work in an agile environment, tight deadlines. so
Yeah.
it's kind of that's what I mean by moving from project to product mindsets, and that kind of you can adapt DevOps, Agile, or Scrum methodologies. Now, when I talk about Agile, I'm talking about the 12 points on the Agile Manifesto. I think that's we've kind of excessively productized Agile,
Yeah.
and I think we've moved away from the essence of it. I think the key word for me is really sort of empowerment, and that empowerment then basically facilitates clear and continuous communication and a focus on a user-centric design. And they're the key strategy. Now, then when you start moving into that kind of environment, then you can start looking at your DevOps culture, practices, and tooling, because in a software development context, your CI/CD process really is your production line. So you're basically controlling on every pull request. You're doing your unit testing, your linting, whatever your static, your SAST, and then validating your code automatically, repeatably. And then when you're ready on a merge to master, then you're basically building and deploying your product. Now you're either doing that continuous delivery, so you're building a package and putting it somewhere, or you're doing continuous deployment. You're literally putting it live as soon as it's built. Kind of move in that way, and that's what I mean by slowing down. As I said earlier, sometimes you have to slow down to go faster, and slow down is basically whereby you invest the time in creating these pipelines, creating these tests, creating these environments. So you're making the investment in these things, so that as your product is out in the marketplace, as it hopefully is successful, you can then go faster because you've got the guardrails around your product.
Right.
And that's not the only example. That's a prime example. And I think that's really what the ebook is trying to do, is trying to sort of share some best practices, and maybe has a kind of a chapter on getting started as well, and hopefully through the sort of storytelling technique, provide a real world example. Real world, I'm kind of doing inverted commas. I know you can't see that there, but I'm doing inverted commas with my fingertips. Scenario then to help teams succeed.
Yeah. So this is all great information, and also I agree with you. And also I understand that you are open sourcing the book, right? To help other aspiring writers, what tools did you use to create the book?
Yeah, well, that's what I was saying a few minutes ago. Like, the book itself is a product. So all the content in the book is in Markdown. It's in a GitHub repository. And then when you have to structure your Markdown, certain file naming conventions, folder kind of conventions, and then I used an open source tool called IBIS, which is a PHP tool that allows the creation of ebooks, i.e. PDFs from Markdown. And IBIS simplifies the ebook creation process by allowing content creators to focus on content, and it provides the functionality to convert that content into an ebook. Now, again, sort of taking a product engineering mindset, the content is in GitHub. When I commit, when I write, it's not like the movie with The Shining, where I'm sitting in a room with a typewriter typing away all day. I write in Markdown. I submit a pull request. When I submit a pull request, there's all sorts of linting taking place, spell checking, all that kind of stuff. That all kind of is done through GitHub Actions. And then when when all that passes, then and I merge code to main, another GitHub workflow runs, and that then has one of the actions in that workflow basically uses IBIS to generate, take all the Markdown and convert it to a PDF. So, and then at that point, then the book is published. The ebook has been the creation of it has been productized. Which I think is kind of cool.
Yeah, absolutely, it's so cool. So thanks a lot, Tom. Before we wrap up, what advice would you give aspiring product engineers or teams looking to elevate their product engineering practices?
I think it's always kind of I go back to the DevOps principles. I mean, you really have to kind of look at continuous learning, staying updated, trying to stay updated with industry trends. Pace of things is changing so fast. and it's getting faster. So it makes it harder to stay up with industry trends, but you have to try and kind of be aware of them, if not overly familiar with them. And you have to, because that kind of leads you to a culture of innovation. And then you've got to encourage collaboration and open feedback within teams and with the business. Try to embrace new technologies. Like an example, first volume I used to open the GitHub Actions. Volume 1, I was basically running IBIS locally and then committing a PDF. Volume 2, there's an action available for that. So now I basically use the action on the merge to main. So it's just, that might have been available at the time I wrote Volume 1. I don't know, but it was something that I came across when writing Volume 2. And so I think if you try to look for and embrace new technologies and methodology, it will help your teams and you personally to remain agile in an ever-changing tech landscape.
That's fantastic advice, sharing your expertise with us today. So for our listeners, check out Tom's upcoming edition of the book on product engineering for an in-depth understanding and practical guide. With that, we conclude today's episode. Thank you for tuning into the Product Engineering Podcast. Until next time, keep innovating and stay curious. This is your host, Dr. Padmavati Roy. Thanks a lot, Tom.
Thank you, Dr. Padma.
Thank you.
That's all from me on this podcast on the product engineering. Thank you for joining us on Science, Medicine and Technology podcast. Your support and curiosity are what keep us exploring and sharing new discoveries. Don't forget to subscribe, hit the notification bell and share our content. Stay curious, keep exploring, keep questioning, and we'll see you next time with another podcast on science, medicine and technology.